Welcome, everyone. Welcome all to SDP Connect. We're going to wait just a few minutes to get this program started, but what we are going to do is remind everyone to go down to interpretation right now and click on your preferred language. That includes English speakers. Please click on your preferred language. You will not be able to hear everybody unless you've chosen English. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started by sharing this on Facebook, going live on Facebook. So we're just going to wait to get started with that. You can share it, what we're saying on Facebook, by going to our Facebook page, and there it is. Welcome, everybody on Facebook. We're happy to have you, and welcome to Disability Voices United's SDP Connect. I'm looking down because I'm about to share it on my Facebook page, where a lot of people count on seeing it. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Judy Mark. I'm the president of Disability Voices United, which is an organization directed by and for people with disabilities and their family members. We are the hosts of our bi-weekly, used to be weekly, now it's bi-weekly, SDP Connect, where we have sometimes guest speakers, sometimes we just lead a discussion and we give everybody a chance to discuss, to ask questions and to talk about how self-determination is going for them. Today we have a really amazing speaker, but before I get started by introducing our speaker, I want to tell you that we've been doing these SDP Connects for probably 16 months, and you can find all of our SDP Connects on our interchange, our self-determination interchange, and that you just go to theinterchange.org. And we have two of them. You choose the self-determination one and you look up SDP Connect, and you can find the recordings. We've probably done almost 40 at this point. So we encourage you all to look at past ones that we've done. We also, just so that you know, we have written 2 books on the self-determination program. One is a manual on self-determination with some great forms and charts that you can fill out and sort of shows you the path of how to go into the self-determination program. As well as we have something called the profiles in self-determination. So you should, and the way you buy those books is through our website. And if you look in the chat right now, you can see how to buy them. But our website, basically, for those on Facebook, is disabilityvoicesunited.org. All right, so let's get started because we have a lot to do today. Today we, well, let me give a little background. As many of you know, the self-determination program has been very slow in starting, very, very slow. The law was actually passed in October 9th. I have it on my wall. It was signed October 9th, 2013. So we just passed the 8-year mark since it became law. Our guest speaker today was part of that process of getting that law passed. It has just been a long, long road in getting the federal waiver approved, which is our contract with the federal government, as well as the as well as getting the regional centers up and running and supportive of this program. So it's been a long road. And what we hope is that things are going to move more smoothly, as it is now available to almost everyone in the DD system in the state as of this past July 1st. But the problems have been profound. And at Disability Voices United, which is one of the lead organizations in the implementation of the self-determination program, what we felt is there needed to be someone at the state level who's saying to us, who we can talk to, who we can say, please help us solve these problems. Please help us get into the self-determination program more smoothly. Please break down those barriers to participation. And so we at DVU actually sponsored a bill in the legislature this past year to create the self-determination program ombudsperson. That bill ended up getting folded into the budget process, and it became law on July 1st. We were very, very excited that we will now have the office of the ombudsperson. So while there is one ombudsperson, there will be a whole office to support it. And just this past week, the Department of Developmental Services, or DDS, announced that they have selected an acting ombudsperson, while the selection of the permanent person was going through the process. The state government does nothing easily and nothing quickly. And so because to create a new position is going to take some time, DDS made a selection of an acting ombudsperson, and we have that individual today. I'm very excited to introduce Katie Hornberger, who was just appointed last week, but she's been a consultant for the last several months at DDS, working on a range of issues, including the self-determination program. And Katie has a long history in our community. She was previously the director of the Office of Clients' Rights Advocates. I'm doing this all from my memory because I don't actually have your thing, but I've known you for so many years, I just know it. So she was the director of Office of Clients' Rights Advocates at Disability Rights California. And that office is, in case you don't know it, is responsible. They have an advocate and an assistant advocate at each of the 21 regional centers. And those advocates actually sit on the local advisory committees of each of the 21 regional centers. So she's quite familiar with this self-determination program, and actually helped to write some of the original materials that we produced and that are in our manual about the self-determination program. So she's quite knowledgeable, and we're really excited to have her here. She has a presentation for us. And so I'm going to now throw it to Katie, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm thinking this is your first public appearance since getting appointed?
It really is. I met with some regional center folks yesterday. But yes, this is the first really public one. I mean, it's been a week, so but it's it's been good. And as Judy said, I was appointed as the acting because it is going to take a while, and we really wanted to get this up and running. And I'm very happy to be the acting for a variety of reasons. One is that I get to set up the office, and that's kind of fun for me, and fits well with my background and the different things that I've been able to do over the years. And I believe in self-determination. I believe in having an array of service delivery systems for people, so that people can not only get the services that they need, but really get them through a system that works for them. So many of you know me. I was scrolling through the participant list, and many of you I know. And so those of you who know me know I'm very much like, I tell it as I see it. I'm going to tell you what I think. And some people love that about me. Other people are a little bit put off by that. But I want people to tell me what they think too. And so, I really want people to, I've got a little PowerPoint. If there's something weird about it, please tell me that slide is weird, because I don't want to keep using something that doesn't make sense to people, that only makes sense in my brain. And so, give me feedback. So with that, I'm gonna start, and you will see. So I, unlike Ed, I am not super smooth with all of this. So you'll see me clunking around. So as Judy said, and as I said, I'm Katie Hornberger. I'm a consultant with the Department of Developmental Services right now. And I've been working on setting up the Office of the Ombudsperson for Self-Determination. When we first joined, I was telling, Ed and Judy and Molly that I believe this is the clunkiest title for something that none of these words roll off the tongue at all. And I know that. And for our two interpreters, I apologize. I apologize. The first slide right off the bat, filled with strange words. But that's what we are. And those terms do have meaning and they are important. So we'll use them. So what I want to do today is, I'm going to be with you all for an hour, and then I actually have to catch a plane. Do some introductions. I want to explain the role of the ombudsperson, go over some of the activities that they'll be engaging in, go over what the ombudsperson doesn't do, how we're going to measure success for the office, and how to get assistance from the office, and any questions. So our introduction will be quick because Judy really explained how this office came to be, and Judy was really fundamental in making this happen. And I think it's really good for our system. I believe in ombudspeople. I've worked with ombudspeople in different systems over the years, in aging and foster care. And I think that they can be really beneficial because they, as we're going to talk about, they can really effectuate policy change in a way that can be really positive. So the ombudsperson is going to do a number of things. And you'll hear me say we. That doesn't mean that I have a mouse in my pocket, because right now it's me. But we're going to have more staff. We will have an actual ombudsperson. We'll have a person under them that really manages the staff and the day-to-day affairs. And then we'll have 3 staff people who will actually work with callers. And then we'll have 1 staff member who's more administrative, reception, gathers information from people, gets people to the right place, all of that kind of stuff. So ultimately it'll be a staff of 6. But as I said, as of today, it's me. But I will use the we because I'm very optimistic that we're going to get staff soon. One of the first things that we'll be doing is providing information. And I will tell you, we've been open for a week. Already, I've had examples of that. So I've had people call me and say, I hear I have to go to this orientation thing, but how do I sign up for it? What do I do? And so I was able to give them the email address and the phone number to sign up for the orientation at their regional center. They were able to do it. They emailed me back, said, thanks so much. I'm signed up for the next session. Good to go. They just needed information. And so that's one of our roles, is just providing information. And the next is to actually assist regional center consumers and their families. And that oftentimes is going to look like facilitating solutions to disagreements. So there may be a disagreement about any number of things. And, sometimes it's good just to have someone else, kind of come in and say, what's going on here? Help me understand. How can we solve this? And sometimes it is also helpful to have someone else say, that's not how I interpret the law. Have you thought about this interpretation? The other thing we're going to do is investigate complaints. And to me, the difference between a complaint and assisting someone with an individual matter is that the complaint is really representative of more than one person. And so there may be things that, what we discover is that, we need to make a policy change. either at maybe one regional center or maybe statewide. Maybe DDS needs to issue a clarifying directive. It could be any number of solutions that come out of those. And then the other thing we have to do is we have to do reporting to the legislature. And we have to recommend changes to DDS and to the legislature. So that's our role as outlined in the law. And to do that, we're going to attend stakeholder meetings because we need to hear how things are going for folks. We need to share information. We need to resolve individual matters. We need to investigate systemic matters. And ultimately, we need to facilitate improvement in the program. And when I think of these activities, I think of doing these activities with consumers and families. I also think about doing them with independent facilitators, with our FMSs, with our regional centers. Because the reality is we need to make self-determination work for everyone. Because if it doesn't work for FMSs and they all end up pulling out, we don't have a system anymore, right? If regional centers hate it, they're going to be slow to implement. If the policies aren't working for them, if it's too cumbersome, we've got to make it work for regional centers. And we've got to make it work for families, or no one's going to want to do it, right? So the program really has to work for everyone. And so my vision of the Ombudsperson office is that everyone will call it, not just consumers and families, but other people will call it with, information about how are things working and ideas of ways to improve the system. I had a fascinating call with one of the heads of a local advisory committee, and we talked about it sort of in a person-centered planning way of what's working, what's not working. And that's a phrase some of you may have used in your person-centered plan to talk about your needs. And so as we thought about self-determination through that lens, about what's working, what's not working, it was really helpful because what we want to do is the stuff that's working, we want to keep it. And if it's working at one regional center, we want to share that because maybe it could work at other regional centers. The regional centers are very different. I mean, we have regional centers, that literally have 10 times as many people as another regional center. And so things don't always translate the same. But let's share those good ideas and see if we can make them work. And by the same token, the things that aren't working, let's figure out solutions to those. And so these are the activities, that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to try and get out to all of the local advisory committees. I've already set up meetings with, I think, 5 or 6, which is pretty good in a week's time. But my goal is to get out to all of them because I think it's really important to not only sort of share that the Ombudsperson is here, but also to hear how things are going in local communities, hear how those meetings are going. Over time, as Judy spelled out, this has been a long run, let me tell you. 8 years, who knew? But, I think, over time, those local advisory committees have changed. And maybe there's more change that needs to come to those committees. And so getting out to those is going to be really important to help figure that out. What the Ombudsperson doesn't do, we don't decide disputes in favor of one party or another. And we don't overturn a judicial system or make a recommendation to a court. So if you call me and say, tell my regional center to give me, I'm going to be like, whoa, dial it back. Let's talk. Let's see what's going on. I'm not going to just call and tell the regional center to do something. And partly, I'm not going to do that because A, they don't have to do it. And B, maybe there's a third option out there that would actually work great for everyone. So let's talk about all of them. So I'm I'm not going to just make a decision and try and make people come on along. To me, the way that we really resolve things positively is that we really have a coming together, and that, you know, we're able to find a solution that really works for everyone. I say that, you know, knowing that for some people who call the office, the advice that I'm going to give you is, you know, thank you for bringing that to my attention. That is very much an individualized dispute. And I think you're at, you know, after talking with Regional Center, talking with you, maybe looking at some documents, I think you're at the stage where you need to go to a hearing and a judge needs to decide. And hearings don't have to be bad. Sometimes reasonable people disagree and we need someone else to make a decision. That's really what a hearing means. So that could be the advice that you get. The ombudsperson is not going to represent people in hearings or assist people with that. I already had one person call and ask if I could represent them in a hearing. That is not the role of the ombudsperson. And trust me, I've got plenty to do without representing people in hearings. How are we going to measure success? Well, hopefully it will increase the number of people in the self-determination program, will reduce the amount of time it takes to enter the program. I'm hearing from some folks that it's, you know, taking months and months and months. And, you know, it does take time if you want to do a good person-centered plan, really get things organized. It does take time. I would say 6 weeks to 2 months is really, you're moving to get it happening that quick. But it shouldn't take a year or 2 years. You know, I mean, I've talked to people who, you know, waited 6 months to do orientation. Like, that's too long. So we want to reduce the amount of time it takes to get into the program. And we're going to recommend policy changes at regional centers and DDS. And then ultimately, if those policy changes don't happen, or if it's a legislative change that we need, we may be making those directly to the legislature. In the office, satisfaction surveys are going to be sent to everyone who calls the office. You know, because, I mean, well, it's just me, it's one thing, but we want to make sure that people who, you know, call the office are getting assistance and are being treated well. So we're going to send out surveys to everyone. Okay, so how do you just, like, you know, throw up the bat signal, yell Katie in the air? How do you get help? So there's a couple of different ways. We've got a toll-free number. We have an email address. I will tell you, as of right now, that email address comes to me, but eventually it will go to a team of people. And we have a website. And I want to actually show you the website because the website also contains an intake form. So remember when I said I'm not as smooth as Ed is at all of this? That was exactly what I meant. So if you're on the DDS website, this is just their homepage. You'll click on over here, Self-Determination Program. And then you scroll a little bit. And here we are, SDP Ombudsperson. So click on that. And this is our webpage. You'll notice that resources is empty. One of my goals is that we develop some good resources to put in that section. And I'm really certain that we can develop things that'll be really helpful to people. So I think that eventually this will be a tab that you find really helpful and useful. Oh, 5:30. And hopefully that will happen sooner rather than later. So, but over here in contact, we've got our phone number again, our email address, and get help here. If you click on get help here, it takes you to an intake form. And you'll go through, you'll fill this in, your first name, last name, mailing or home address, phone number with area code, email address, preferred language, regional center, name of your service coordinator. Have you entered SDP? Your question or problem, anyone you've already talked to about it. But what you'll notice is if you leave any of these fields blank, that's okay. It'll still accept it. So you can fill out this form. This will also come to me. Once again, eventually it will go to other folks, but as of right now, it just comes to me. And then we'll reach out to you either by phone or email and get in touch with you and talk about what you're experiencing. And so those are the ways that you can get in touch with the office. And I encourage people, to call the office. Like I said, it can be about, a problem of your own. It can be about a barrier that you see in the system. It can be about an idea that you have to make the system better. I want to hear all of that. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can see the screen. Okay. And partly I want to hear that because I have found in life that really the best, I'm moving the curtain so that I don't have this weird thing of light on my head. There we go. Is really the way that we generate good ideas is by, I come up with I say, oh, I've got this idea. And then, I'm talking to Judy. And then she says, oh, but what if you did da da da? And then we call Connie Lapin and say, Connie, we've had this idea. And then Connie says, oh, you know what else you could do with it is you could do da da da. And then what happens is I'm talking to, another family member, and then they say, oh, you know what? I was thinking about something like that. What if da da da? And in the end, the idea is very different than what I had initially, but it's a better idea. And so I really want to hear, ideas that people have, because I think when we all generate them and talk about them, that's where we really come up with the best ideas. So reach out to the office, like I said, whether you have an individual problem, whether you've got an idea, whether you're seeing a barrier that you don't know the solution to, but you're certainly seeing a barrier. I want to hear about those too. And I know we've got independent facilitators on. I think we might even have some FMS folks on. All of those folks I want to call also. So really everybody call. And I see Connie and Harvey have their hand up. And since I already used their name, I feel like, I have to call on them quickly since I used them for my example.
Well, we actually have a process.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we'll just explain because we have, I want everyone to know, we have kept everyone on mute because we need to make sure that there's no noise while the interpreters are interpreting in Korean and in Spanish. But let me tell you, there's a couple of ways that you can ask questions. This is see, I have the weird light thing going on me too. I'm going to try to scoot this way. I don't know. Anyway, you can use the raise hand feature by going down to the bottom of your screen, clicking on reactions and choosing raise hand. Or you can write your question in the chat, and Ed Herzl has been organizing the chat, and we'll be able to pose some questions to Katie from that as well. Why don't we start with a couple of people who have their hands raised, Ed, if that's okay?
If I may, I accidentally lowered someone's hand who had it raised at the beginning. So I'd like to offer her the chance to speak. Because
Okay, so go ahead. I'll remember the name because somebody had raised their hand literally before you started talking, Katie. So go ahead and re-raise your hand. I'm not sure if there was any question to actually ask yet, but that's whose hand was raised.
SDP guest. So.
Okay. Yeah, I should tell everybody, some of you have come in as an SDP guest. That is our fault. It is not your fault. We would prefer to know who it is that's raising your hand. So if you could go and change your name, you can do that by clicking on participant, finding your name, and then clicking on the down arrow and choosing rename. Okay, so we're going to start, as Katie said, with Connie and Harvey. Just so that people know, Connie and Harvey really are the inspiration and perspiration for the self-determination program. So they always get the first question. They're just like, no, that is absolute. There's no exception to that. So go ahead, Connie and Harvey.
I bow to Connie.
So thank you for mentioning me, Katie. Hi, welcome to our SDP Connect through DVU. I hope you are a guest often because you'll get a lot of information. I just want to say for anyone that's on this call that don't know, I'm one of the elders. So I call myself an octogenarian, which is a nice way to say I'm in my 80s. And I've learned a lot. I've been an advocate for over 50 years. So I have two questions, and they're not easy ones. And I think they're really significant, and they're more systemic, but they come down to the bottom line. How do you speak truth to power? I mean, when we have the Office of Ombudsperson, we want to make sure that, and you said it in your presentation, thank you for that presentation. We want to make sure there's independence, autonomy, and accountability. I know you know from working at DRC, and we all feel it, that families and individuals with developmental disabilities have tremendous fear of retaliation when they challenge the system. And so we want you or the office to demonstrate that it is independent and autonomous and accountable. We want the ombudsperson and the office of the ombudsperson to be our safety net. Not an easy question to answer. The second one is a speck easier. How do you use the information we have already? We have enough. I know I'm glad to hear that you're going to start attending meetings, and I know that you're going to have a lot of people ask you questions, and you're very open to that. But we already know the barriers. We already know about the slow, extreme rollout. In fact, Judy, thank you for saying that. It's October. In October 2013, our law was passed. That's 8 years. We were going to get 2,500 in the first 3 years. We were in the 700s. So how do you affect the bureaucratization of now self-determination? It's becoming so cumbersome that that's why people are stuck. So what would be your solutions for being proactive in a timely manner? I guess the magic word is timelines. How will you affect timelines so that we'll know what you want to do and by when? And they will mean something. I know government, believe me, that's why I said I've been doing this for 50 years. I also was on DRC's board. I mean, I get the whole picture, but timelines are everything. So thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, those aren't easy questions. And some of those honestly are going to evolve over time. But I think two things when I think about, fear of retaliation, trusting the ombudsperson, trusting the office. The first thing is, it's actually in the statute that it's all confidential. So if you call the ombudsperson office, and in the calls I've talked to people just in the past week, I've said to them, is it okay, can I call and talk to the regional center and use your name? And we're always going to ask. We're not, and it's not just with regional center, it's with DDS. So one of the things that I've been working on, and this is a little bit in the weeds for some of you, and so it's, we have to have a database because we have to give the legislature data about who's calling the ombudsperson office, right? So we have to create a database. So I meet with IT at DDS, and we're talking, and they said, why don't you just like, we can add a couple fields to like the big database. And I said, oh no. I said, all of this is confidential. So how are you going to do enough security controls that I'm going to believe that the only people who have access to those fields are, as of this minute, me? Right? I mean, and they kind of looked at me funny. And I said, or we need a whole new, like a whole different system. And so, you know, I think that that confidentiality is really important. And like I said, not just with regional centers, but also with DDS. You know, and I saw in the chat, someone said, you know, about like an anonymous thing. So that intake form that I showed you, the way it was set up originally. So those of you who know me, not terribly techie, as you saw with me trying to like move the PowerPoint off my screen. So the way that that website got created was I made like lists of, you know, things that I wanted on there, and then someone else worked the magic. When they initially did it, all of those fields were mandatory. And I said, no, we can't have them all be mandatory. And I talked to a couple of self-advocates who were like, oh no, they can't all be mandatory. And particularly one of the advocates that I talked to, who's bilingual, said some of those just don't have meaning for people in monolingual communities. The other piece of it is exactly that, you know, for people who want to be anonymous, you don't have to fill in your name. You know, you can just put in the what is the problem section. It is harder when people want to be anonymous because, you know, I may have other questions, you know, and so being able to follow up is, you know, could be much harder if someone wants to, you know, just fill in the what is the problem, no contact information. That doesn't mean that I won't take it seriously, you know, and so I think it's, you know, and that's where when I talk about hearing from everyone, I truly do want to hear from everyone. And so that form is a good way for people who want to be very anonymous, who are very worried about retaliation, and who, no matter how many times I say it's confidential, don't trust that, because I get it. Based on your own experience, who's this lady telling me it's confidential? Not going to believe it. There's an outlet for that. And so and then, you know, so that gathering information and figuring out how to improve our system, I think is sort of the key. And, you know, and those recommendations, you know, I don't want to be the only one making a recommendation. I don't want this to be like the Katie recommends program, because I truly, I mean, I know some stuff, I've been around a while, but, you know, this isn't going to be the Katie program. I really want the recommendations that come either to a regional center, to DDS, or to the legislature be based on lots of people saying, yeah, that's a good idea. And so, because part of self-determination is that cultural shift, and Harvey and Connie, we have talked about this cultural shift so much over the years.
Paradigm shift, huge one, and it still hasn't stuck.
No,
you know, who's in charge?
Nope, it has not. It hasn't stuck at all. And, you know, and that's where I don't want the ombudsperson to be like telling people how things are. It goes to that shift in how we think of people. You know, I want people to tell me how this program should run, right? I mean, I can figure out how to write a statute and things like that, but the ideas and what's meaningful for people need to come from people who are using the program and interacting with it. And
but can I chime in here just to follow up, because I want to make sure everybody's clarified on this. So if there's, let's use a basic example. If there's a directive that has come out from DDS that says this is the way that regional centers are supposed to be implementing the law, and a regional center is not implementing the law in that way, what can you do to help? I mean, are you going to, and how independent are you going to be from DDS? If DDS is upset that you're getting involved in doing this, how independent are you going to be from that?
That's the meat.
So the reality is that, you know, we're a unit of DDS. The ombudsperson reports directly to Nancy Bargeman, the director. And once the person is appointed, it's a 4-year term, and they could be terminated for cause, like if they stole or, you know, what have you. But they can't be terminated because someone disagrees, you know, with an opinion. And so I think a regional center is not following a directive. I go to them and we talk about, you know, what the directive says, what they're doing, how that matches or doesn't match. And then I would make recommendations to them. And then they have to ultimately, frankly, decide whether they're going to follow them or not. And some regional centers are going to be like, thanks, Katie, you've helped us. We're going to change. Other regional centers, because remember, 21 regional centers, some of them are going to be like, thank you for that information, Katie. We're going to keep doing what we're doing right now. I mean, you know, that's true, right? I mean, we all know that's true. And then I'll go to DDS and say, are you willing to force them, you know, through the mechanisms that you have to come into compliance with this directive? And ultimately, if DDS isn't, then the challenge for me then becomes, how do I make that happen? Is there a change in the law that needs to happen? You know, because a lot of, you know, if you really look at the self-determination law, it's not very long. And I don't want to legislate everything and turn it into some giant long law, but do we need to change the law that would better bring about compliance rather than the directive? And if so, what does that look like? And then working with the legislature to get that into place. So that's what I would do. Ultimately, you know, people can listen to me or not. You know, it just, if you don't, then it goes to the next level.
So I'm going to move on to the next question because there's a lot of people, and I know you have to be off by 5:30, but we may come back around to that important question of Connie and Harvey's. Okay, I'm going to go to Karen Mulvaney. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Judy. Hi, Katie. Thank you for your presentation. And I thought it was, I wasn't actually aware that your office would have the power to go directly to the legislature with a recommendation. So I think that goes a long way towards answering a lot of questions that I have heard about your office and its independence. It would also be helpful if self-determination advisory committees who are currently required to provide their recommendations to DDS and the regional center were also required to issue them to you as well, because you didn't exist at the time that law was written. And so you are left out of that equation at present. Some of the questions that I know are on a lot of people's minds are things like how are unclear things like camp and social rec are going to be handled under self-determination, and so on and so forth. So guidance that could come forward on that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you probably saw me, you know, I'm actually writing those down. And that's where, you know, like I said, I don't want to just write laws to write laws, but things like adding ombudsperson into the statute about the lax makes total sense. Yeah. Great ideas.
You know, there's a question that's in the chat related to what Karen just said about social rec. There was a directive just issued last week by the department about about 2 regional centers about social rec. And I know that a number of people, a few parents have actually reached out to me recently saying that when they've gone to their regional center to ask to change their budget to include social rec, they were told, well, you can include social rec, but we're going to take away other services, specifically respite. So that was never I know, because I've been advocating, and so did you, for the restoration of social rec. It was always an additional service. It was never an instead service. And so I'm wondering how you come out on that.
Yeah, I mean, so this idea of sort of trading respite for social rec has actually, it's been around forever. I mean, 20 years ago when I was a CRA, it was around. And this is where it gets hard, sort of, legally, is because, respite and social rec are not the same service. They do different things for the family, very different things. And so it's not like trading equestrian therapy for swimming. Do you know what I mean? Like that I could see. Respite and equestrian therapy are not the same. That being said, if depending on your family, the more engaged your child is in some activity without you, that could lead to less of a need for respite for your family. And so, but those situations are so individualized and need to be assessed very individually. To me, it's not, and some regional centers I know do this, it's not like an hour for hour exchange. You got 2 hours of equestrian therapy per week, we're reducing your respite by 2 hours per week. You might find that, I don't know, your child does really well and now they're much calmer, and so your need for respite is decreased. Or you might find that the opposite is true, and because now you're fighting with your child at equestrian therapy, you need more respite because your life has become more chaotic. But that's where it truly needs to be individually based, and not, not so much policy driven. And that's where I have a problem with some of these policies that are they're very directive, like the hour for hour exchange kind of policies, because I don't think that those reflect the full range of experience of people.
So just so that you know, it was not the intention of the legislature when they restored social rec to have it limited just to people who are not in the self-determination program. That was never their intention. And that is basically what's happening right now. And that's what we're seeing out there. I'm going to move on to the next question because there's so many people with hands raised and you're here for 11 more minutes. I'm so bummed. Molly Kennedy, do you have a quick question for Katie?
Yes, I do, Katie. It's very nice. I'm glad you gave an overview. I am very concerned of what I hear from you. Is that I feel if a person is going to the ombudsman, it's their last resort. It's where they have hit a brick wall with their regional center. And I feel like regional centers have a lot of people advocating for it. Okay, DDS, all this stuff. I assumed that this ombudsman would be kind of a thorn in regional center side. If you said if it's in a directive and they don't want to do it, well, you just go tell them at DDS. That's not good enough. If it's in a directive, you need to say it's the directive It's in law. You have to do this. And unless you don't, you guys at DDS have to come up with some consequences, because what I'm hearing is just a lot of, well, we can do our best, but we can't make them do it. And to me, then why do we have this office? Maybe I'm the only one that felt this way, but it just felt the way you talk about, well, I'm gonna touch the regular student. I'm gonna, but if they don't want to do it, oh well, I'm sorry. That's not good enough to me.
So Molly, I hear you. And the way that the statute that created the Office of the Ombudsperson is written, it doesn't give me authority to issue consequences to a regional center that I don't believe is in compliance.
Then you need to, we need to help you get that authority in some way.
And so currently, that's why I said, I can make a recommendation, and then if they don't comply with my recommendation, then I go to DDS, who does have authority to take, to do consequences. They can put people in regional centers on special contract. They can do an assortment of things. And then ultimately, that's why I said, it may be that we need to do something legally in regard to, that issue, whatever it was. But currently, the way the Ombudsperson statute is written is I don't have a hammer.
Okay, well,
So,
that's why I'm work for DBU. We'll
Right.
get you.
Yeah,
We will get you a hammer.
and I think that's why we have to be open about these things, because I don't want people calling thinking I have a hammer and then they're disappointed.
Right, but you and I have already talked about this, Katie, where I have very high expectations. It was our idea to have an ombudsperson. We knew that we couldn't give the ombudsperson the authority to sanction a regional center. The only agency that can do that is DDS.
Right.
But you can go to the legislature, and we hope that you will do that on a frequent basis. And the legislature, what they can do is to pressure DDS to say, this is not working. We know the self-determination program isn't working. It was supposed to have 2,500 as of 2 years ago, and it's still in the 700s. It's not working. And we are really hopeful that you will make this happen. All right, we're going to move on to Monica Flores. Go ahead, Monica. You can unmute.
Yes. Hi, afternoon. I must speak Spanish. It's my first language. I'm going to try to speak English because this meeting is very important for me, for my son, and I want to let you know, guys, it's a lot of problems to get the services for regional centers. Last year, my son's, he do the change. He's gonna be 4 years, and he doesn't have services. He's no services for the speech, OT, and all of the services about therapies. No therapies for him, and he doesn't have the IP because the coordinate, she sent very late the papers for the IP. And it's a lot of problems with the regional center, and the most problem is when the people don't speak English, because it's very difficult. And when we want any services, it's a lot of problems because they send a lot of papers to fill out the forms, many papers, many questions. They want to know everything in the last, and how can I say? And for the last, it's going to deny if I want any services like personal assistant and everything for the COVID. we have to fill it out a lot of papers, and then they had a lot like go back and like this, and no, we don't have like a response. It's not easy for me to get the services. And then I asked to the coordinator, I'm sorry.
You know what, I'm gonna stop you because what I'm trying to do is get another question in. And so I'm trying to keep things short. So go ahead, Katie.
So, I mean, I'm gonna take what you said and I'm gonna kind of turn it a little bit. So, I mean, I think fundamentally the question is sort of twofold. One, how do I get moving in all of this? And two, for families with unmet need, how do I, increase my services where I've had unmet need? And I think, how you, make it move faster is and this takes a lot of time, unfortunately. I think it's just being constantly, kind of on people, setting clear deadlines. I need a copy of my budget by X date, and be reasonable, but, and then in terms of unmet need, it's thinking about, because the regional center is going to have to certify that you would have got those services in the traditional system. How do you explain it sort of in the traditional system to frame it? And so, I think it can be, I think it's doable, definitely. I mean, I don't think we created a bad system there, but I think it does take some work, to frame that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is difficult for the Latin people. It's most difficult for the Latin people to search the programs to the benefits, because everything said no. And we lost a lot of time to go to the court and to be appeal and everything. It's a lot of issues. And I don't know why. I have another question too.
No, I'm gonna stop you there because we're only gonna have time for one more person before Katie has to leave. But I will definitely call on you again. We're gonna still go another 30 minutes after Katie leaves. We're recording this and I will send her the recording and she can listen to the last 30 minutes, okay? I'm gonna call on Cindy Cox to please very briefly ask your question.
Hi, thanks, Katie. Welcome to the Nut House. We're excited to have you here. So this is a systemic issue that we at First Choice Solutions are seeing over and over again. And that is the 2,500 transitional funds. We have, again, we're having people go out and write person-centered plans for people, charging the $2,500 and not moving them over into self-determination. Basically, they're writing the plan saying, here's your plan, here you go. Charging the entire $2,500, and then the family has no idea how to put together a spending plan, or more importantly, how to transition through. So they're calling us saying, hey, can you help me move through? And then there's no transitional funds available for us to continue the work. And this is across 9 regional centers that we've worked with.
Oh, wow.
So it's systemic.
Yeah. You know what, Cindy, call me so we can talk more about it, because I've got like 5 questions in my brain already.
Sure, I'll email you and we'll make an appointment. Sure.
Perfect.
How was that for quick, Judy?
You're amazing.
Thank you,
Cindy. We also, as speaking on, I'm not an independent facilitator, but speaking on behalf of them, if you can add to that mix, maybe when you're talking to Cindy, I'm hearing problems that regional centers are still requiring independent facilitators to get full vendorization, even though the directive says that's not the case. And so in some cases, it's taking them 6 months, 9 months, sometimes even 12 months to get paid. And so we need strong independent facilitators here. And if they're not getting paid, they're going to leave the field. So that's another really big area of IFs.
Yeah, I actually talked to a woman about that just the other day because she's having trouble because they're trying to make her become a vendor.
Yeah, so that's not required. All right, well, I'm going to respect the fact that you have to get on a plane. Hopefully you're going someplace fun, but it's not...
I'm going home.
Oh, okay. All right, well, that's nice.
I was
Well,
at
what-
Disneyland yesterday with a 3.5-year-old. So
I was there on Sunday, so I get it. Thank you so much, Katie. And I want to extend an invitation to come back. Like
Yes,
maybe we could think about
definitely.
like every couple of months you come
Yeah.
in and listen to the folks. That would be great.
yeah, I would love to come every couple of months. Everyone, like, be doing your list of complaints to tell Katie about. And then when I
great.
come, I can sit with my notepad.
All right,
That would
great.
be great.
Thanks,
Thank
Katie.
you all.
Take
So
care.
nice to
Have a
see
safe
everyone.
flight.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. I apologize that we couldn't get all your questions into Katie, but we're recording this and I promise you she'll listen to it. I plan on having regular meetings with Katie. And so I'm going to now go to Ed, why don't you, I'm going to go to Evelyn, but why don't you go, I'm going to come to you next, Ed, to give me some questions from the chat.
Cool.
Hi, Evelyn.
Hola Judy, ¿cómo estás? Buenas tardes a todos. Yo quería hacer dos preguntas para Katie. Una es si ella es la persona que tenemos que acudir cuando vemos barreras, la comunidad, para participar en los comités locales de autodeterminación. Pues resulta que en Orange County, después de casi 2 años participar yo en los comités, en este último comité que fue en septiembre, no nos avisaron, no hubo notificación a las familias por correo electrónico. En el calendario de eventos, en la página web del centro regional no se publicó con un tiempo determinado y ahora me doy con la sorpresa que ya pasó. Y esto es claramente, ha habido una barrera para que la comunidad participe. Yo quisiera poner en conocimiento de ella y cómo nos puede ayudar. Ya mandé un email a la presidenta del comité, copié a los miembros del comité, al State Consul y a OCRA. Solamente OCRA contestó, la presidenta hasta ahorita no contesta. Y número 2, realmente estoy muy sorprendida con la respuesta que dio Katie sobre que ella va a escribir algunas observaciones a los centros regionales, pero más no puede hacer nada. Hay que tocar de nuevo la puerta de 10. Algo que tiene que tomar bien en cuenta, Katie, es que es un proceso entre reuniones, reunión informal, mediaciones, audiencia. Es un desgaste muy fuerte mental y físicamente de nosotras como mamás, de nosotras como facilitadoras independientes, porque nos frustra centrarnos en una reunión con el centro regional, abogando por nuestros clientes y que cada centro regional haga lo que se le da la gana. Yo no entiendo, si la ley es la misma, es una sola ley, ¿por qué los centros regionales hacen lo que se les da la gana? ¿Por qué cada centro regional tiene sus propias pólizas y las tiene tan dentro de sus venas que no mira más allá? No hay excepciones, no hay empatía por la comunidad. Entonces, me preocupa mucho lo que dijo Katie, regresar a tocar la puerta de DDS y que haga algo, es realmente que es algo que no creo que funcione. Y bueno, eso era lo que quería compartir hoy día. Gracias, Chori.
Thank you, Evelyn. I'm going to restate the question because some of you maybe didn't turn on your language. So you were hearing her in Spanish. You needed to have English on, and Lorna did an outstanding job of interpreting, even with expression. I loved that. But also our Korean interpreter couldn't hear what was being said. So Evelyn has been attending for many years her local advisory committee and regional center of Orange County. And she is very concerned that she doesn't get notices for the meetings. She found out that she just missed one because she didn't get a notice about it. But she also feels that the local advisory committees are a barrier because they're not helping, they're not listening to the community, they're not helping the community. And that, you know, it's something that she really feels is important for Katie to understand that. I just want to comment that I hear that concern at many regional center local advisory committees, not all of them. Some of them are really trying to be very helpful and work with the community to get your voices heard at the regional center. I know that we have one of the members on from a regional center of Orange County, and I'm sure he has similar concerns about the committee not functioning in the highest way that it could. So thank you for that, Evelyn. I do want to mention that the chair of the Statewide Advisory Committee is here, Rick Wood. I'm going to make you a co-host if I can. I can't, so I'm going to ask you to unmute. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Ed. She's so fast. So I don't know, Rick, if you're in a position to make a comment on that, what was just said.
Well, yeah. So Judy, as you know, I receive inquiry, questions, requests each week from individuals who are having very similar problems. And what strikes me about what I just heard is that it just seems like the non-English speaking communities are having more difficulty than those who speak English. That seemed very clear to me from the comments that Evelyn was making, first of all. And secondly, I think that she raises a good point, which is, you know, everybody's quite hopeful as we went out and tried to get this ombuds language in the trailer bill, and it was successful. Judy, thanks to you and to Connie and Harvey who are on and others. But you gotta wonder whether this is going to work if there isn't any authority to sanction. So there isn't any authority to sanction regional centers other than coming from DDS. So it always makes me a little nervous when I hear, as I did when Katie was speaking, that this is a unit of DDS. So what do we do? Well, look, we need to make sure that we continue to apply pressure to the Ombuds office to identify problems, and the more people that call, the more people that sign up with whatever the concern is, the better off we're going to be, because they're going to be tracking that. I don't know how this is going to come out. As you can imagine, 2,500 was the goal for 3 years. We're at 750. And that 2,500, by the way, for everybody's benefit, is now the new goal to be realized or achieved in the next year. Now think about it. They couldn't make the 2,500, and so now we've got a new goal of 2,500 to be enrolled by June 7th of 2022. So I've always thought self-determination was going to come from the bottom up. Meaning people that wanted in would develop momentum, and we would overcome those barriers that we know exist, and we hear them in every single one of these SDP meetings or webinars. I'm hopeful, everybody. I'm really hopeful that this is another step that will allow us to resolve the problem so that the numbers can increase, so that this program will remain viable. But I share the same concerns, and I don't have the answer today, nor do I have the answer each week when I receive calls. Judy, I know you're the same. We refer people to regional centers. We make suggestions. We ask people to make contact with the chair of their local advisory committee so that those things can be brought to the attention of staff at their monthly meetings. But in the end, we've just got to keep at it. And I'm hopeful that over time, as these things come up, they're all common. I hear the same thing week in and week out, just different regional centers. So that's my long-winded answer. I don't have the answer for you other than the fact that we're aware of it. And we'll see whether this is yet another tool, you know, in the toolbox to try to work through the issues that people are having in getting in.
Do you mind inviting everybody to the next meeting of the Statewide Advisory Committee?
Yeah, no, I don't mind at all. We're going to have a meeting on the 10th of November. It has been announced. It is a virtual meeting. The statewide committee consists of the 21 chairs of the local advisory committees. We're going to have DDS there. They've been invited to engage in a collaborative conversation, not a defensive conversation, not an attacking conversation about the issues that we have, and in particular, what we think best practices are coming out of the barriers document. That is best practices to resolve and overcome barriers. And then secondly, DDS did not participate in the last meeting because the trailer bill language that in part has resulted in this office being created had not yet been adopted. And so they didn't necessarily want to take positions, but it's a lengthy meeting. It's 5 hours, 5.5 hours, starts at 10 o'clock on November 10th. And I'm not sure, Judy, what the public dissemination of that is going to be. In fact, that we're going to have it on the State Council website. It's certainly going to be on the DDS website as well. So
and we'll promote it at DVU as well.
Yeah.
Stay on, Rick, if you don't mind, because we'll take some more questions. Mulugeta, how are you?
Hi, Judy. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Manuel also said hi.
Judy, peace out.
And one of the question I'm trying to raise is the availability of services in the inner cities. And I'm not downside the availability of resources, but I want to focus on availability of service providers. And it's really, really hard. For example, I have a sister in Covina. She paid something like $18 for 1 hour piano class. But in the inner city, we used to pay like $30 for 20 minutes. And is there a way where we can give incentives for vendors to come to the inner city need? In our community, I'm from Ethiopian community, and we're working very hard in order to recruit volunteers and vendors, especially nowadays. We're working very, very hard. So is there anything the I can't even pronounce that word. So the person who's in charge can just help us. Thanks.
Yeah, honestly, it's a little hard for me to imagine the ombudsperson would get involved in that, because she wasn't getting too involved in the other things where there's actually a legal issue. But the availability of resources is in both within inner cities and within rural communities is the entire reason why the self-determination program even started. Rick is his son is one of the original pilot participants, because they live in a very rural area, out of the way of everything, couldn't find any service providers in the traditional system. And so really the advice I can give to everybody is that you shouldn't be looking for, first of all, there are no vendors in the self-determination program with the exception of the FMS. So don't look for vendors. Look for people in your community who already exist in your community, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club, it's the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, it's your churches, it's your Parks and Rec, your people who work at the school. There are people who exist in your neighborhood. When I say community, because community is like the disability community, but I'm talking about your neighborhood. Who exists in your neighborhood that you can engage to help you? So, let me give you an example of something that my son is doing in a self-determination program that we've come up with. We have found a couple of other young men who are around my son's age who live in our neighborhood, who literally live a few blocks away from us. And we're creating a men's club. They were calling it the Men's Club of Westchester. And these are going to be a few young men in their 20s who are in self-determination. We're pooling our resources and we're sharing the costs of a facilitator to help organize activities. And we're going to the local university to bring in young men who are around the same age to be part of the men's club. And they're going to decide what their activities are. And they're going to go to the local gym or the YMCA and engage them to become part of these guys' lives. We're going to engage the local shopping mall, the local Vons, whatever it is, to help us have them participating in their own community. So don't always think that you have to go out and go and find service providers or people who are doing things always for you, but that you are going into your community, finding the things that already exist, enjoying just as if you didn't have a disability, enjoying your community as much as you can, but using your funds to hire support so that you can participate in all of those cool activities. I don't know if you want to add anything, Rick?
That's just about the best explanation of self-determination that I've heard. You don't have to go to established vendors or providers in order to obtain and receive services that will improve the quality of your life or in the life of your family. Judy, I really applaud you, because many of the things that you just suggested are free or very inexpensive. And in your instance, you're pooling resources, so it's less expensive. And so this is just a terrific example of how it is that it can be done differently with better results. And the independent facilitator community is going to get that. I mean, they already do. In my area, where we've got 20 years of independent facilitators, and I see Cindy Cox on the screen, the creativity that comes out of the independent facilitators individually and as a group is simply amazing, guys. This will spread out into the community. Just an excellent, excellent point. Do not rely on the regional center to tell you everything and anything that you need to know, because you can do it on your own. Just think differently. It's thinking outside the box. That's the paradigm shift. What is better for your family? It may not have anything to do with going out and finding an occupational therapist who does the same thing over and over again, teaching you how to button your shirt. Instead, you go spend your money, that money, on something that is going to provide value that is much greater than that which is offered through the traditional delivery. I know it's a broad statement, but you said it well, Judy. Thanks.
Somebody was just private messaging me asking if we were going to pay the college students, and we are not. Because Loyola Marymount University, we live in the neighborhood, they have a community service requirement. So this is going to be part of their community service. And hopefully we will build a friendship with these guys so that even beyond their hours of community service, they'll become part of the natural supports. And Mulugeta, I'm officially inviting your son Emmanuel to be part of the men's club. So let us know if he's interested. Okay, we have somebody called SDP guest, because I know some people came in, this is our fault, you came in as SDP guest, but if you could say your name. I asked you to unmute. I can't call out your name because I don't know your name, but it's a picture of a mom with a cute daughter in the photos. Okay, all right, not hearing you. We're gonna go now to Mary. Go ahead, Mary. Mary, are you there?
Sí, buenas tardes, Judy.
Okay, go ahead.
Estoy mirando dos problemas. Cada centro de los 21 centros regionales tienen pólizas diferentes y no sé qué se puede hacer, Judy, para que todos los centros regionales tengan las mismas pólizas, porque si es una sola ley, la ley Latterman, ¿por qué cada centro regional pone pólizas bien distintas? Sería bueno trabajar en que todos los centros regionales tengan las mismas pólizas. Esa es mi opinión, pero no sé si se puede hacer a través de los comités asesores o cómo se podría trabajar ese punto, porque yo ahí veo que ese es un gran problema. Cada centro regional hace sus propias pólizas y aparte interpreta la ley Latterman a su manera. Entonces, creo que eso está mal, en mi opinión. Entonces quería sugerirle que si se podía trabajar en que tengan las mismas pólizas. No sé si sea algo que se pueda hacer o trabajar. Es mi opinión, Judy. Gracias.
Thank you, Mary. I'm just going to repeat and then I'm going to turn to you, Rick, so that our Korean participants hear the question. Mary sees the really big problem as being that there are, even though it's one law across the state, there are 21 different ways and policies at the 21 different regional centers. And it is really important that everybody have the same opportunities. And I saw you shaking your head, Rick, because this is what you have been living for the last 4 years. So go ahead.
So it is a great question. And so to sort of, put it in larger context, so the legislature passes a law. It's called self-determination. It leaves it to DDS, which is the appropriate body or entity, agency of the state, to put some meat on the bones of the law, right? To create self-determination structure. It is the obligation of the regional centers. In fact, DDS has delegated to the regional centers the implementation of that structure that is created. So one of the things that we have been trying to do, I'm telling you, for years now, is to get DDS to issue more directives. They can have guidance and directives. Guidance is a suggestion. A directive is theoretically mandatory. And that's, I think, goes to the question, why can't everybody have the same policy? And so what's the other half of that? If a regional center is not following a directive, and DDS does issue directives, but they haven't issued enough, and we've been very vocal about getting them and continue to be vocal in focus groups and other meetings to get them to issue directives. So what are the consequences? I think somebody spoke to it earlier. There's no real accountability, because the DDS is not in effect enforcing its own directives. So this is not complicated to me. You can implement a policy by issuing a directive, by saying to the regional center, this is how you must do it. In the end, there are some regional centers, and as Judy knows, she's been to nearly all of those meetings, as have I, not all of those meetings, but meetings of all of the regional centers. And I'll tell you, there's a wide range of commitment, if you will, by regional centers to the self-determination program. And what we're hearing consistently is that some regional centers over and over and over again are putting up barriers that are very difficult to overcome. So in answer to your question, one of my goals system-wide is to get DDS to issue more directives and less guidance, for them to hold the regional centers' feet to the fire, meaning require them to be accountable. And you heard Katie say earlier, in the event that we can't get the regional centers to go along with what the department is requiring them to do, to go to the legislature and say, hey, this isn't working and this is why. It's not because people aren't interested. It's not because people can't do it. It's because the barriers, the obstacles that are being put up are too high for people to overcome.
Thank you, Rick. There's a question that's been put in the chat by Eunice, and I'm gonna read it right now. I want to know if it's okay for a vendor we had since our SDP started in April to send me a contract to sign in which they are now charging up to 5% of total hours authorized per month that may be utilized for schedule and unscheduled supervision, indirect shadowing. This was never charged in the traditional system. Okay, go ahead, Eunice. Let me try to, I'm unmuting you. I'm just trying to get clarification on that question.
Yes. Yes, I need to know that. I received that contract today in which they are asking now, this is the vendor that do the personal assistant for Jasmine. They're asking now this contract requesting from 1 to 5% increase of the total hours. They're going to be charged now for a scheduled or unscheduled supervision, for shadowing, and all of this was not done before when we were in the regular traditional way. And now they're giving me this contract with all of this. new things.
Yeah, so I guess my first question to you is why, oops,
Oh, this is our contract for self-determination.
is she going out for you
And,
as well, Rick?
the compensation.
So Eunice, we don't have great signal with you right now.
I cannot hear you. Let me
Yeah,
see
okay,
if I
good.
can move this.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Judy, can you say it again?
Yeah, so let me tell you where we are, is that I think it's really important for people to understand that when you're using traditional service providers, you're going to have a different experience in the self-determination program than you would if you would just hire people directly. And so hiring people directly and they are working for you, you may have a better experience. And that's kind of why self-determination was created. There's a whole lot of reasons why people end up using agencies, and I understand that. But those agencies have a right to ask you for more money if they want to, and you have a right to say no. Remember, you're in charge here. They're not. So if you don't want to do it, you can say no, and they can either continue to serve or you can find someone else to serve you.
Okay, so if I say no, I won't sign that contract, will they continue doing, the girls will continue coming? The service will continue, or?
I couldn't say that. You're going to have to negotiate that yourself with the agency, but I would consider if you have some women who are working with your daughter that you like, you might want to ask them to work for you directly instead of working through the agency.
I did that from the beginning. And neither one of the three of them want to do it independently. They
what
have
if you
their other
offer?
consumers.
Yeah, but what you should be offering them more money per hour.
I did, and they still say no.
Okay, well then you may need to find other folks.
Eunice, you've got my email. Eunice, you've got my email. Can you send me that contract? If you received it by email, can you forward it on to me? I'd like to see it, and I'll help you.
Okay, because it's it's kind of tricky, and I don't want to go ahead and sign something that it was going to give me a bigger problem. Now I don't have anybody. I'm having a hard time trying to find people, staff for Jasmine. I cannot find anybody. Everything that I have tried, like going to the college and taking, requesting the job with the job headlines and everything to put there. The director of that department referred me to this girl, which was great, but then she was looking for work desperately, and before me, she was off before our job. She also applied for another airline place, and the airline gave her a job as an accountant, which she was.
Let me interrupt you if I can, and because this is a universal problem. I don't want to cut you off because I know that half the people on this call, I'll bet half the people on this call have this problem, and you risk, if you leave the agency, not being able to find somebody. But here's what I'm going to say to everybody. The agencies charge a profit or a premium over and above what the individuals are making.
Yes.
And if you, what we have done is we've taken in lieu of an agency and said, all right, let's take that profit and give it to the people. Now, I don't know whether that's really going to be right for your daughter, and you and I, Eunice, have had a number of discussions about her needs and so on, but for everybody out there, it's not one or the other. There are a lot of different ways that you can approach the problem. It is difficult because the pay is not as great as it is in other industries or businesses or professions, and in particular because we've got a labor shortage going on and everything else. But Eunice, I'd like to see that contract. Maybe I've got a suggestion or two for you. And listen, I love the question because this is not something that is unique to you at all.
Okay, I'm gonna thank you, Eunice. We have time for just one more comment. It is 6 o'clock. Heads up to our interpreters. We'll run about 3 or 4 minutes late. I apologize. Go ahead, Fernando and Elizabeth.
Yeah, Fernando here. So couple of quick things. I know we're running out of time because we can definitely stay on another hour and still not cover everything that needs to be discussed. But Rick, to your point about directives, I agree in the sense that DDS has to continue a flurry of very specific and direct directives to the regional centers on the implementation of this program. What we are seeing today, that even though the directives have been given in the past, those directives are then based on perspectives, and they're all not only 21 different perspectives of that directive, but also at any given time within a certain regional center, that perspective will change. And we're seeing that firsthand. So I personally thought that the Office of the Ombudsperson would be able to come in and help define the perspectives to what their true objective and meanings are. That's number one. The second thing is that, you know, we talked earlier, a minute ago, we're talking about resources and action resources and been innovative about doing so. I know that for us, the Latino community, that's been a super hard challenge because of the equity piece of it. That it's not equal. It's for many of us, it's not equal. And I'm not just saying only the Latino community gets impacted. I know there's a lot of families that are not starting at an equal place in order to implement this program, which leads me to my last point. You know, we're a year into the full community, right? Having access to self-determination. So there are literally more questions than answers at this given time. So I encourage us to continue doing what, you know, this platform is doing. These great conversations, not just to communicate them to each other, but really to capture them. And it goes back to your one word that you used a minute ago, Judy, accountability. Even if the regional center can't be held accountable by an office of the ombudsperson, it could be held accountable to listen. And if not, we have options like the boards and others to help back and communicate that. So there can be a pathway, if you will, if and when we can unite these voices in conversations like being tonight. So.
Just a few words. I just want to say that, you know, we've been reporting not barriers, but roadblocks for a long, long time. So we know the roadblocks and we know that they exist. I believe that if, you know, given the ombudsman a little bit of time, she will find out that we're talking about systemic issues and real barriers to the program. So my belief is that we need to give ourselves some time, continue to report the roadblocks and the barriers. And I believe that hopefully together, we're all gonna make a way, because self-determination is here to stay and we need to push forward. So I'm committed. Y les digo lo mismo a la comunidad hispana, sigamos adelante, se va a mover las barreras y los bloqueos, si unidos vamos a continuar empujando para el futuro de self-determination.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I want to thank everybody. I'm going to let Elizabeth have the last word. And I want to thank everybody. I wish we could go longer, but we do this all the time. And by the way, Rick and I are volunteers. And so it's like, there's just, we have to get back to, and I have noticed, Rick, that you turned the Dodger game on in the background. So I hate to say, I know we're a statewide organization, but go Dodgers. So thanks everybody for joining us. We will be back in 2 weeks. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be talking about. I haven't had time to think of that yet, but I want to thank everybody. This was an interesting session today, and we have quite a bit of follow-up to do from it. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.